Commander Dale Harris stared at the empty screen in disbelief. The signal from the 5th Exploration Fleet had gone completely silent 30 minutes ago. 200 warships carrying 50,000 crew members had simply vanished without sending a single distress call. Dale stood in the command center of the Imperial flagship Dominion, watching his team work frantically at their stations. The massive room buzzed with nervous energy as officers tried to make sense of the impossible situation unfolding before them. "Still nothing, sir," Lieutenant Paul Dixon reported from the communications station. His voice carried an edge of panic that Dale had never heard before. "All channels are dead. No emergency beacons, no automated systems, nothing at all." Dale walked to the main display screen where a star map showed the last known position of the 5th Fleet. They had been exploring Sector 47, a region on the edge of Imperial space that promised rich mining opportunities. The fleet should have been reporting their findings every hour. Instead, they had disappeared as if they never existed. Fleet Admiral Karen Price entered the command center with quick, determined steps. She was a veteran of 40 years in the Imperial military, and Dale had never seen her look worried until now. Her face was pale, and her jaw was set tight. "Report," she demanded, stopping next to Dale at the central console. "All contact lost with 5th Fleet at 0900 hours, Dale explained, pulling up the data. "We've tried every frequency, every backup system. The last transmission was routine. Commander Helen Ross reported finding several asteroid fields with valuable minerals. Then silence." Karen studied the screen with narrowed eyes. "What about their ship transponders? Every vessel has multiple tracking systems." "That's what makes no sense, Admiral," Paul Dixon called out from his station. "The transponders are offline, all of them, 200 ships, and not a single tracking signal is active." "That's impossible," Karen said flatly. "Those systems have redundancy upon redundancy. They're designed to survive ship destruction. Even if every ship was destroyed simultaneously, we would still detect the emergency beacons." Dale nodded grimly. "I know. I've been in the fleet for 20 years and I've never seen anything like this." Karen turned to face the room. "I want every available ship scanning that sector. Send probe drones, long-range sensors, everything we have. I want to know what happened to my fleet." The command center erupted into activity as officers began coordinating the search effort. Dale felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. Something was very wrong. Ships didn't just disappear, especially not 200 of them at once. Over the next 6 hours, the search teams found nothing. No debris, no radiation signatures, no signs of battle. It was as if the 5th Fleet had been erased from existence. Dale reviewed the data repeatedly, hoping to find something the other officers had missed. Intelligence Officer Linda Foster approached his station carrying a data pad. She looked troubled, her normally confident expression replaced by confusion. "Commander Harris, I found something strange," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure others weren't listening. "I've been going through the fleet's communication logs trying to find anything unusual before they vanished." "And," Dale prompted. "The logs have been deleted," Linda said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Not just the recent ones. Every communication the 5th Fleet sent for the past 3 days is gone, completely wiped from our systems." Dale felt his blood run cold. "That's not possible. Our systems have multiple backups. Even if someone deleted the primary files, there would be copies in at least 5 different locations." "I know," Linda agreed, "but they're all gone. Navigation data, tactical reports, even personal messages from crew members to their families. Everything related to their mission in Sector 47 has been systematically erased." "When did the deletions happen?" Linda's face went even paler. "That's the worst part. According to the system logs, the files were deleted during the same hour the fleet went silent. Someone wiped their records while destroying them." Dale stared at her, trying to process the implications. "Show me everything you found. Don't tell anyone else until we understand what we're dealing with." He spent the next hour with Linda, reviewing what little data remained. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Whatever happened to the 5th Fleet, it involved technology far beyond anything the Empire possessed. The ability to delete files from Imperial systems while simultaneously destroying an entire fleet suggested an enemy with capabilities they had never encountered. Dale brought the findings to Admiral Corinne Price in her private office. She listened in silence, her expression growing darker with each detail. "This changes everything," Corinne said finally. "We're not dealing with a natural disaster or a random attack. This is calculated, precise, and demonstrates technological superiority we can't match." "Should we evacuate the sector?" Dale asked. Corinne shook her head. "We can't show weakness. The Empire spans 1,000 worlds. If we retreat every time something goes wrong, we'll be seen as vulnerable. No, we need answers. We need to know who did this and how." She pulled up a classified file on her personal screen. Sector 47 borders an unmapped region. 6 months ago, a scout team reported finding a primitive species in that area. They called themselves humans. Dale leaned forward, reading the brief report. "It says here they're pre-industrial. No space travel capability, no advanced weapons. The survey team classified them as no threat." "Exactly," Corinne said. "Which is why I don't think humans are responsible. This has to be another advanced civilization, possibly one we haven't discovered yet." "But we should verify that," Dale suggested. "We should at least investigate the human homeworld, make sure they're still as primitive as the report claims." Corinne considered this, then shook her head. "We have bigger concerns. I'm assembling the second armada. 300 ships, our best weapons, full battle readiness. They'll enter Sector 47 and find out what happened to the Fifth Fleet." Dale wanted to argue, wanted to suggest caution, but he knew better than to question the Admiral during a crisis. Instead, he simply nodded and returned to his duties. The Second Armada departed 3 days later under the command of Fleet Commander Brandon Cole. Brandon was known for his aggressive tactics and unwavering confidence. He addressed the entire fleet before departure, his voice booming through every ship's communication system. "We go to avenge our brothers and sisters," Brandon declared. "Whatever destroyed the Fifth Fleet will face the full might of the Imperial military. We will show no mercy. We will demonstrate that the Empire does not accept threats to its people or its territory." Dale watched the fleet depart from the observation deck of the Dominion. 300 warships moving in perfect formation, their weapons charged and shields at maximum. It was an impressive display of power. It should have been reassuring. Instead, Dale felt only dread. The Second Armada entered Sector 47 exactly 12 hours after departure. Brandon Cole maintained regular communication with Imperial Command, reporting everything they saw. The sector appeared completely normal. Stars, planets, asteroid fields, all exactly as the original surveys had indicated. "No signs of hostile activity," Brandon reported. "We're scanning for any unusual energy signatures or debris from the Fifth Fleet. So far, nothing." Corinne Price stood next to Dale in the command center, listening to the reports. "Tell them to stay alert. Full defensive posture at all times." "Yes, Admiral," Dale relayed the orders. For 3 hours, the Second Armada searched the sector systematically. They scanned every asteroid, every planet, every cubic kilometer of space. The fleet moved deeper into the region, approaching the border with the unmapped territory where humans supposedly lived. Then, without warning, every communication channel went silent at once. Dale felt his heart stop. "Communications, status report." "All signals lost simultaneously, sir," Paul Dixon replied, his hands flying over the controls. "Just like before, every ship in the Second Armada just went offline." The command center descended into chaos. Officers shouted reports, alarms blared, and Admiral Corinne Price stood frozen at the central display, staring at the empty space where 300 green dots had been moments before. "Check the transponders," Corinne ordered, her voice cutting through the noise. "Already checking, Admiral," Linda Foster called out. "They're all offline, every single one." Dale pulled up the sensor data from nearby monitoring stations. "I'm detecting nothing. No weapons fire, no explosions, no energy spikes. The ships are just gone." Corinne's face had gone completely white. "That's 500 ships, 75,000 personnel, gone in 2 weeks." The enormity of the loss hit everyone in the room. The Imperial fleet had suffered its worst defeat in history, and they still had no idea what had caused it. Worse, there had been no battle, no warning, no chance to fight back. Lock down all fleet movements immediately, Karen ordered. Recall every ship from the outer sectors. I want full defensive formations around all Imperial worlds. As of this moment, the Empire is in a state of emergency. The next 72 hours were chaos. News of the lost fleet spread across Imperial space despite efforts to contain the information. Panic gripped civilian populations. Trade routes shut down as merchant ships refused to leave protected space. Military families demanded answers that nobody could provide. Dale barely slept during this time. He reviewed every piece of data, searched for any pattern or clue that might explain what happened. His team worked around the clock, exhausting every possibility. It was Amy Carter, a junior technician in the sensor analysis division, who finally found something. She burst into Dale's office at 3 in the morning, carrying a data chip and looking both excited and terrified. "Commander, I found something," she said breathlessly. "A probe. We had an automated probe near the edge of Sector 47. It was far enough away that it wasn't destroyed with the fleets." Dale sat up immediately. "Show me." Amy plugged the chip into his display. "The probe's sensors were damaged by some kind of electromagnetic pulse, but I managed to recover 3 seconds of corrupted video footage. It's not much, but it's something." The video played on the screen. At first, Dale couldn't make sense of the distorted images. Then Amy enhanced the footage, cleaning up the interference frame by frame. What Dale saw made his blood run cold. Ships. Dozens of ships, but unlike anything in the Imperial database. They moved through space in impossible ways, seeming to phase in and out of normal existence. Their hulls were smooth and organic-looking, covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. But worst of all, the ships had no heat signatures, no engine trails, no energy readings of any kind. According to every known law of physics, the vessels in the video couldn't exist. Yet there they were, captured on camera for 3 precious seconds. "Those are human ships," Amy whispered. "I checked the hull markings against the database. The symbols matched the primitive writing system from the human homeworld survey." Dale replayed the footage a dozen times. In the final frame, before the probe's sensors failed completely, he could see what appeared to be weapons firing from the human vessels. But they didn't fire projectiles or energy beams. Instead, space itself seemed to tear and fold around their targets. "We need to show this to Admiral Price immediately," Dale said. The emergency council meeting convened 1 hour later. Admiral Karen Price, Senator Julie Morgan, Strategic Advisor Monica Baker, and Admiral Victor Lane gathered in the secure briefing room. Dale presented the recovered footage, and the room fell silent as they watched. "This is impossible," Admiral Victor Lane said flatly when the video ended. "Those ships violate every principle of physics. They can't exist." "And yet they do," Dale replied quietly, "which means humans aren't the primitive species we thought they were." Senator Julie Morgan leaned forward, studying the frozen image on the screen. "The original survey of the human homeworld. Who conducted it?" Monica Baker pulled up the file. "Commander Helen Ross led the team. She filed a standard first contact report 6 months ago, classifying humans as pre-industrial with no space capability." "I want to speak with Commander Ross immediately," Karen said. "She's assigned to the Outer Rim Patrol," Monica replied. "We can have her here in 3 days." "Make it happen," Karen ordered. "In the meantime, we need to decide our next move. We've lost 500 ships and 75,000 people. The Empire needs to respond." "We should attack," Admiral Victor Lane declared, slamming his fist on the table. "Mobilize the entire fleet. Show these humans what happens when they challenge Imperial authority." "With what?" Senator Julie Morgan asked sharply. "Did you see that footage? Those ships use technology centuries beyond ours, maybe thousands of years beyond ours. An attack would be suicide." "Then what do you suggest?" Victor challenged. "We do nothing. We let them kill our people without consequences." "I suggest we consider the possibility that we started this conflict," Julie replied. "The Fifth Fleet was ordered to claim territory in Sector 47 for mining operations. What if that territory was already claimed by humans? What if we invaded their space first?" The room erupted into argument. Dale listened to the council members shout at each other, feeling helpless. They were making decisions based on incomplete information, driven by fear and anger rather than logic. Karen Price finally silenced the room by standing up. Enough! We will make no decisions until Commander Ross arrives and explains what she knows about humans. Until then, all fleets remain in defensive positions. We watch and wait. Commander Helen Ross arrived at Imperial headquarters 2 days later. She was escorted directly to the briefing room where Karen Price and Dale Harris waited. Helen looked nervous, as if she knew why she had been summoned. "Commander Ross," Karen began formally. "6 months ago, you led the first contact survey of a species calling themselves humans. You classified them as primitive and recommended quarantine for future study. I need you to explain that assessment." Helen's face went pale. "Admiral, I filed my report according to protocols." "Don't lie to me," Karen said coldly. "We've recovered footage of human ships destroying our fleets. Those ships demonstrate technology far beyond anything we possess. So either you're incompetent or you deliberately falsified your report. Which is it?" Helen was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I falsified the report." The admission hung in the air like a bomb. Dale felt anger rising in his chest, thinking of the 75,000 people who died because of this woman's deception. "Explain," Karen demanded. "My survey team spent 3 weeks observing the human homeworld," Helen began. "What we saw terrified us. The humans have cities that span entire continents, orbital stations that make our largest spaceports look like toys, ships that move through space in ways that shouldn't be possible." She pulled up images on the briefing room screen. Dale saw cities of gleaming towers, space elevators reaching into orbit, massive vessels that dwarfed anything in the Imperial fleet. "We detected quantum manipulation technology, matter energy conversion, artificial intelligence systems integrated with biological beings," Helen continued. "The humans are so far ahead of us technologically that comparison is meaningless. They could destroy the entire empire without effort." "Then why didn't you report this?" Dale asked, struggling to keep his voice calm. "Because I knew what would happen," Helen replied. "I've seen how the Empire responds to advanced civilizations. We attack them preemptively, claiming we're protecting Imperial interests. I filed a false report hoping the Empire would leave humans alone long enough for diplomacy to become possible." Karen's expression was ice cold. "Your deception led to the death of 75,000 Imperial citizens." "No," Helen said firmly. "The Fifth Fleet's commanders led to those deaths. I recommended quarantine. They ignored that recommendation and ordered the fleet to claim human territory anyway. They chose expansion over caution and people died because of it." Dale wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Helen was right. The Empire's aggressive expansion policies had finally led them to encounter a species they couldn't dominate. "The humans sent us a message," Dale said suddenly, remembering. He pulled up the communication that had appeared on every Imperial system 3 days ago. The text appeared on screen. "You entered our space without permission. You came with weapons. Your fleets are gone. Leave us alone. This is your only warning. Captain Ryan Cooper, Earth Defense Command." Below the message were galactic coordinates showing human-claimed territory. It included Sector 47 and 12 other resource-rich systems the Empire had been planning to colonize. "They're giving us a chance," Senator Julie Morgan said, reading the message. "They could have attacked Imperial space directly, but instead they're warning us to stay away." "It's a threat," Admiral Victor Lane countered. "They're trying to intimidate us." "It's working," Dale muttered. Karen Price studied the message for a long time. Finally, she made her decision. "We're going to try diplomacy. One small ship, unarmed, carrying a delegation to negotiate with the humans. Commander Harris, you'll lead the mission." Dale felt his stomach drop. "Admiral, I'm not a diplomat." "You're honest, intelligent, and you've been right about this situation from the beginning," Karen replied. "You questioned whether humans were responsible when everyone else dismissed the possibility. You argued for caution when others wanted to attack. You're the right person for this. What if they destroy us the moment we enter their space? Then we'll know diplomacy isn't an option," Karen said grimly. "But I believe we have to try. We can't win a war against an enemy we don't understand, using technology we can't match. Talking is our only real option." Dale wanted to refuse, wanted to suggest someone else, anyone else. But he looked at the faces around the table and saw fear mixed with desperation. The Empire was facing its first real crisis in centuries, and they needed someone to take this impossible risk. "I'll do it," Dale said quietly. The diplomatic vessel was named the Messenger, a small ship designed for peaceful contact missions. It carried a crew of 50 carefully selected personnel, all volunteers who understood they might not return. Dale stood on the bridge as final preparations were made, reviewing the mission parameters one more time. His crew included Communications Officer Tracy Bennett, a specialist in xenolinguistics who had spent years studying first contact protocols. Navigator Kyle Sanders had memorized every star chart of the region. Engineer Patricia Moore could repair almost anything and had insisted on joining despite having 3 children waiting at home. "All systems ready, Commander," Patricia reported from engineering. "We're as prepared as we can be." Dale nodded, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans waited. A species so advanced they could erase fleets without leaving a trace, yet they had chosen to send a warning instead of attacking. What did that say about them? "Take us out," Dale ordered. "Set course for the coordinates in the human message." As the messenger left Imperial space, Dale received a final transmission from Admiral Corinne Price. Her face appeared on his screen, looking older and more tired than he'd ever seen her. "Commander Harris," she said formally, "you carry the hopes of the Empire with you. Succeed and you might save billions of lives. Fail and we face a war we cannot win. Either way, you're the bravest person I've ever known. Good luck." The transmission ended. Dale stood alone on the bridge, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations, their lives now in his hands. The messenger jumped to faster than light speed, heading toward human space. Dale knew there was no turning back now. In a few hours, they would either make history or become another footnote in the Empire's list of lost ships. As they crossed the border into the territory humans claimed, every sensor on the ship began detecting something impossible. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands, sitting in the darkness of space. They hadn't been visible before, but now they appeared on every screen, surrounding the messenger on all sides. The ships were identical to the ones in Amy Carter's recovered footage. Sleek, organic-looking vessels that seemed to exist and not exist at the same time. They made no threatening moves, but their presence was message enough. Humans had been watching the Empire's borders all along. They had always known the Empire was there. They had simply chosen to remain hidden until the Empire forced their hand. Tracy Bennett's voice broke the tense silence on the bridge. "Commander, I'm receiving a transmission. Audio only. It's in perfect Imperial standard." "Play it," Dale ordered. A calm male voice filled the bridge. "This is Captain Ryan Cooper of the Earth Defense Command. Diplomatic vessel messenger, you have entered human-protected space. State your purpose and intentions." Dale took a deep breath, knowing his next words would determine the fate of everyone on his ship and possibly everyone in the Empire. "This is Commander Dale Harris of the Galactic Empire," he replied steadily. "We come unarmed and in peace. We request formal negotiations to prevent further conflict between our peoples." There was a pause that felt like an eternity. Dale could feel his crew holding their breath, waiting for the response. Finally, Ryan Cooper's voice returned. "Follow the designated course, Commander Harris. Do not deviate from the flight path we provide. Do not scan our vessels. Do not power any weapon systems. Any deviation from these instructions will be considered hostile action." "Understood," Dale replied. "We will comply with all instructions." A navigation path appeared on Kyle Sanders' screen. The navigator studied it briefly, then looked up at Dale with wide eyes. "Sir, this course leads directly to the third planet in the system, the human homeworld." Dale felt a mixture of hope and terror. The humans were inviting them to Earth. They were allowing the Empire's representatives to see their civilization firsthand. It meant the humans were confident enough to show their true capabilities, which was either very good or very bad for the Empire. "Set course," Dale ordered. "Let's go meet our neighbors." The messenger moved forward, surrounded by an escort of 5 human vessels. They traveled in silence, the human ships maintaining perfect formation without any visible communication. Dale watched them through the viewscreen, trying to understand how they moved so precisely, so effortlessly through space. Earth grew larger in the viewscreen, a blue and green world remarkably similar to many imperial planets, but the similarities ended there. As they drew closer, Dale could see the massive orbital stations surrounding the planet, structures that dwarfed the largest imperial space docks, connected by energy bridges that shouldn't be possible according to known physics. The planet's surface was visible through the clouds, showing cities that stretched from horizon to horizon, yet somehow the world still maintained vast forests and oceans. The humans had built an advanced civilization without destroying their environment, something the Empire had never managed. "We're approaching orbital range," Kyle announced. "They're directing us to dock at one of the stations." "Comply," Dale said softly, unable to take his eyes off the incredible sight before him. The messenger docked smoothly with a station that could have held 100 ships its size. As Dale and his small team prepared to disembark, Patricia Moore approached him quietly. "Commander," she said, "I've been analyzing the station's structure while we docked. The materials, the design, everything. This station is alive. It's biological technology merged with mechanical systems. I've never seen anything like it." Dale nodded slowly. "Get used to feeling that way. I suspect we're going to see a lot of things we've never imagined." He led a team of 10 people off the ship, leaving the rest of the crew behind for safety. The moment they stepped into the station, Dale knew they had entered a different world. The corridors were wide and organic-looking, with walls that seemed to breathe. The lighting came from no visible source, simply existing wherever it was needed. A group of humans waited to greet them. They looked remarkably similar to Imperial citizens, which made sense since many Imperial species shared common ancestors. But there was something different about these humans, something in their eyes that suggested they saw more than others could. A woman stepped forward, her manner professional but not cold. She wore a simple uniform with no excessive decoration, just clean lines and practical design. "Commander Harris," she said, extending her hand in what Dale recognized as a human greeting gesture. "I'm Olivia Martinez, diplomatic representative for Earth Defense Command. Welcome to humanity's home." Dale took her hand, noting her firm grip and direct gaze. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "Let's be clear about something from the start," Olivia said, her tone becoming more serious. "You're here because we chose to allow it. We've been monitoring your empire for 50 years. We know your history, your policies, your military capabilities. We know what you do to civilizations you consider inferior." Dale felt shame wash over him. "Then you know we've made mistakes." "Mistakes," Olivia repeated, her expression hardening. "Is that what you call destroying 23 civilizations, enslaving their populations, strip mining their worlds?" The words hit Dale like physical blows. He had known the Empire's expansion was aggressive, but 23 civilizations, the scale of it was horrifying. "I didn't know," Dale said honestly. "Most Imperial citizens don't know. We're told we're bringing order and civilization to primitive worlds." "Primitive," Olivia said bitterly. "That word has justified countless atrocities. Commander Harris, humanity is not primitive. We're going to show you exactly what we are, and then we're going to discuss what happens next between your empire and our people." She turned and began walking down the corridor. Dale and his team followed, entering a world beyond anything they had imagined. The future of the Empire, for better or worse, would be decided in the next few hours. Dale could only hope that humanity would prove more merciful than the Empire had been to others. As they walked deeper into the station, Dale caught glimpses of technology that made his mind reel. Humans working alongside artificial beings that seemed conscious and alive. Holograms that felt solid to the touch. Gardens growing in impossible spaces, feeding themselves through means he couldn't begin to understand. They passed through a transparent corridor that looked out onto Earth below. Dale stopped, transfixed by the view. His team gathered around him, equally mesmerized. The planet rotated slowly beneath them, clouds swirling in perfect patterns, cities glowing like jewels across the night side. "It's beautiful," Tracy Bennett whispered. "I've seen 1,000 worlds, but this is different somehow." It's alive in a way most worlds aren't, Olivia Martinez said, standing beside them. We learned centuries ago that technology and nature aren't enemies. They can exist together, support each other. Your empire hasn't learned that lesson yet. Dale turned to face her. How long have you been watching us? Long enough, Olivia replied. We discovered your empire 52 years ago when one of your scout ships passed through what we considered our exploration zone. We tracked the ship back to Imperial space and began observation. We wanted to understand what kind of civilization you were before making contact. And what did you conclude? Olivia's expression was sad. That you're dangerous, aggressive. Your empire expands without regard for the lives or rights of others. You take what you want and justify it with claims of bringing civilization to primitives. We've seen it 23 times now. 23 species absorbed into your empire, their cultures destroyed, their people enslaved or scattered. Dale felt sick. I didn't know. Most imperial citizens don't know. That's part of the problem, Olivia said. Your people are kept ignorant of what's done in their name. They see the wealth flowing into imperial worlds, the resources and goods from conquered territories, but they don't see the cost. They don't see the families torn apart, the cultures erased, the world stripped bare. Kyle Sanders spoke up, his voice shaking. If you've known all this, why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you intervene before now? Because we don't believe in conquest, even when dressed up as rescue, Olivia answered. Every civilization has the right to develop on its own path, to make its own mistakes and learn from them. We hoped your empire would eventually mature, would learn that cooperation is better than domination. But we didn't, Dale said quietly. No, you didn't. Instead, you sent a fleet into space we explicitly marked as human territory. Your Fifth Fleet fired on an unarmed human research vessel studying a nebula formation. 47 human scientists died. They were unarmed, posed no threat, and your fleet destroyed them without warning or provocation. The words hit Dale like hammer blows. He had assumed the Empire was responding to aggression, not committing it. I didn't know that. The reports said nothing about attacking civilians. Of course they didn't, Olivia said bitterly. After killing our people, your fleet attempted to claim one of our colony worlds. They sent demands that humans evacuate within 24 hours or be considered hostile. That's when we responded. The Fifth Fleet disappeared, Dale said. The Fifth Fleet was relocated, Olivia corrected. We don't kill when we don't have to. Every person from those ships is alive and safe on one of our worlds. They're being educated about humanity, about what really happened, about the lies they were told. In 10 years, when they've learned to see beyond imperial propaganda, they'll be returned as ambassadors. Dale's mind reeled. 75,000 people weren't dead. They were prisoners or students or something in between. Why didn't you tell us they were alive? Would you have believed us? Olivia challenged. Or would your military leaders have claimed we were lying, used it as propaganda to justify attacking us? Dale couldn't answer because he knew she was right. The Empire would never have accepted that explanation. They would have assumed the humans were weak, trying to avoid retaliation. What about the Second Armada? Dale asked. What happened to them? The same, Olivia said. Commander Brandon Cole was warned. We sent him a message telling him to turn back, that he was entering protected space. He ignored it and continued forward with weapons charged and shields raised. We considered that a declaration of hostile intent. Patricia Moore had been quiet throughout the exchange, but now she stepped forward. How did you do it? Our sensors showed nothing. No weapons fire, no energy spikes, nothing. The ships just vanished. Olivia smiled slightly. Would you like to see? She led them to a different section of the station, into a large chamber filled with equipment Dale didn't recognize. Human technicians worked at consoles, their fingers moving through holographic displays with practiced ease. In the center of the room stood a massive sphere that seemed to contain a miniature universe, stars and planets rotating in perfect simulation. This is our Quantum Operations Center, Olivia explained. From here, we can manipulate space-time at the quantum level. Your ships exist in 3 dimensions, moving through normal space. We exist in 7 dimensions simultaneously. We can move matter from one location to another without traveling through the space between. That's impossible, Patricia breathed. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical. By your understanding of physics, yes, Olivia agreed. But we don't use chemical or nuclear energy anymore. We tap directly into the quantum foam that underlies reality itself. Unlimited clean energy, available anywhere, anytime. She manipulated a control, and the sphere showed a recording of the Second Armada's final moments. Dale watched as human ships appeared around the Imperial fleet, not moving through space but simply existing where they hadn't existed a moment before. Then the Imperial ships began to fade, like ghosts becoming transparent, and they were gone. We created temporary quantum tunnels, Olivia explained. Each of your ships was relocated to a designated holding area. The entire operation took 7 seconds. Your people never even knew what happened. One moment they were in Sector 47, the next they were on one of our worlds, confused but unharmed. Why go to such effort? Dale asked. You could have just destroyed the fleets. Because every life is valuable, Olivia said firmly. Even our enemies. We don't believe in waste, Commander Harris. We don't believe in unnecessary death. Your people attacked us, but they were following orders, doing what they believed was right. They deserved a chance to learn the truth, not to die in ignorance. The simple humanity of the statement made Dale feel ashamed. The Empire would never have shown such mercy. Imperial doctrine was clear. Enemies were destroyed, not educated. Threats were eliminated, not reformed. Tracy Bennett was studying the holographic displays with fascination. This language interface, it's responding to thought, not touch. You're controlling this system with your mind. All humans are connected to our quantum network from birth, Olivia confirmed. We merge with artificial intelligence at the neural level. It enhances our cognitive abilities, allows us to process information at speeds your biology can't match. One human can operate an entire fleet through direct mental interface. That's what we saw in the recovered footage, Dale realized. The ships moving in perfect coordination. They weren't being controlled by separate crews. They were all operated by a single consciousness. Or multiple consciousnesses working in perfect harmony, Olivia said. We don't lose our individuality when we connect. We gain the ability to share thoughts, experiences, and reactions instantaneously. It makes us stronger together while remaining unique as individuals. Kyle Sanders looked overwhelmed. How far ahead of us are you? Decades, centuries. We achieved faster than light travel 200 years ago, Olivia replied. We developed quantum manipulation technology 150 years ago. We merged with artificial intelligence 120 years ago. By your standards, we're at least 500 years ahead, possibly more. The gap is difficult to measure because our development path diverged from typical patterns. How? Dale asked. How did you advance so quickly? Olivia led them to another viewing area, this one showing historical images of Earth. We nearly destroyed ourselves 400 years ago. Nuclear war, environmental collapse, disease. Humanity was on the brink of extinction. Only 500 million people survived. The images showed devastated cities, poisoned oceans, skies dark with ash. Dale felt horror looking at the destruction. We had a choice, Olivia continued. Die as a species or learn to work together. We chose cooperation. Every human nation united under a single government. We pooled our resources, our knowledge, our efforts. We focused on survival first, then rebuilding, then advancement. New images appeared showing the slow recovery. Cleaned oceans, restored forests, new cities built in harmony with nature. Once we unified, progress accelerated beyond our wildest dreams, Olivia said. Without war, without competition for resources, without the waste of duplicated efforts, we advanced faster than any species in known galactic history. We turned our weapons into tools, our armies into builders, our hatred into hope. Your empire faces a similar choice now, she added, turning to face Dale directly. You can continue your path of conquest and aggression, eventually meeting a species even more advanced than us who won't show mercy. Or you can learn, grow, and join the galactic community as equals rather than conquerors. Dale met her gaze. Is that why you brought us here, to teach us? Partly, Olivia admitted. We're also evaluating whether you can learn, whether your species is capable of change, or if you're locked into patterns that will eventually destroy you. Commander Harris, you're here because our psychological profiles suggested you might be open to truth. that you value life over pride, peace over power. What happens if we fail your evaluation? Olivia's expression became grave. Then humanity will take more direct action, will quarantine imperial space, prevent your expansion into the wider galaxy. You'll be contained until you mature enough to be trusted, even if that takes 1,000 years. The weight of responsibility pressed down on Dale even harder. He wasn't just representing the Empire. He was being tested, and the results would determine the future of billions of people. I want to learn, Dale said firmly. I want to understand, whatever it takes. Olivia studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Then let's begin. We have much to show you and not much time. Your Admiral Karen Price will want answers soon, and the answers we give her will depend on what you learn here. Over the next hours, Olivia and other human guides showed Dale and his team the full scope of human civilization. They visited cities on Earth where millions lived in comfort and harmony. They saw farms where technology and biology merged to produce food without harming the environment. They toured schools where children learned through direct neural interface, absorbing knowledge at incredible speeds. Most importantly, they met human citizens, regular people who shared their stories, their hopes, their views on life and civilization. Dale found himself liking these humans, respecting their values and philosophy. They weren't alien or incomprehensible. They were just people who had chosen a better path than the Empire had taken. A man named Marcus Lee, who identified himself as a chief scientist, spent several hours explaining human technology to Patricia Moore. She listened with the excitement of a student discovering new worlds of knowledge. The key is viewing everything as interconnected, Marcus explained, manipulating a hologram showing quantum particles. Your empire treats technology and nature as separate things. You bend nature to serve technology. We learn to work with natural systems, enhancing them rather than replacing them. This station we're on isn't built. It's grown from engineered organisms that create metallic structures as part of their life cycle. Living metal, Patricia breathed. That's incredible. It's efficient, Marcus corrected gently. The organisms repair damage automatically, adapt to new needs without requiring redesign, and recycle themselves at the end of their functional life. No waste, no pollution, no need for constant maintenance. Nature solved most engineering problems billions of years ago. We just had to learn to read the solutions. Tracy Bennett was speaking with a diplomat named Julia Roberts about human philosophy and communication. We believe that understanding creates peace, Julia explained. When you truly understand another person's perspective, their fears and hopes and dreams, violence becomes almost impossible. That's why we merged with AI. It allows us to share thoughts and emotions with perfect clarity. Misunderstandings become rare. But doesn't that eliminate individuality? Tracy asked. Not at all, Julia replied. Would you lose your individuality by learning to communicate perfectly with words? The network enhances our ability to understand each other, but we're still unique individuals with our own thoughts and feelings. We can choose what to share and what to keep private. The difference is we can share perfectly when we choose to. Meanwhile, Dale was in a conference room with General Claire Watson, the military leader who had overseen the response to the Imperial fleets. She was direct and professional, laying out the facts without emotion. Your Fifth Fleet killed 47 of our people, Claire said, pulling up images of the scientists who died. Dale forced himself to look at each face, to remember that these were real people with families and dreams. We could have destroyed that fleet as retaliation. Instead, we relocated them and began education programs. We chose mercy when we could have chosen justice. Why? Dale asked. Because we're strong enough to be merciful, Claire replied. Weak civilizations kill because they're afraid. Strong civilizations protect life because they can afford to. We judge ourselves by how we treat those who are powerless against us, not by how we dominate those weaker than ourselves. The words resonated with Dale deeply. The Empire judged strength by the ability to conquer. Humans judged strength by the wisdom to choose not to. As the day wore on, Dale felt his entire worldview shifting. Everything he had believed about civilization, progress, and strength was being challenged and found wanting. The Empire had seemed mighty and advanced, but compared to humanity, it was crude and barbaric. Finally, as Earth's sun set visible through the station windows, Olivia gathered Dale and his team together again. "You've seen what we are," she said. "You've spoken with our people, examined our technology, learned our philosophy. Now you must decide what message you'll take back to your empire. The decision isn't easy, and the consequences will be enormous either way." Dale looked at his team. Patricia Moore was clutching data chips filled with scientific information humans had freely shared. Tracy Bennett had notes from dozens of conversations about communication and understanding. Kyle Sanders looked thoughtful, processing everything he'd seen. "We tell the truth," Dale said finally. "We tell Admiral Price everything. That humans are more advanced than we can imagine. That they could destroy the Empire easily but choose not to. That they're offering us a chance to learn and grow rather than remain trapped in cycles of conquest and violence." "And if your military leaders choose violence anyway?" Olivia asked. "Then they're fools," Dale replied. "But at least I'll have given them the information to make an informed choice. I won't lie. I won't downplay what we've seen here. The Empire deserves to know the truth, even if the truth is humbling." Olivia smiled for the first time since they'd met. "That's exactly what we hoped you'd say, Commander Harris. You've passed our evaluation. You're ready to become humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Empire." Dale felt relief and terror in equal measure. "What happens now?" "Now you return to Imperial space with our formal proposal," Olivia said, handing him a data crystal. "This contains our terms for peaceful coexistence, territory agreements, technology sharing protocols, educational exchange programs. We're offering your empire a path forward, but your leaders must choose to take it." "What if they refuse?" Olivia's expression became serious again. "Then we implement containment protocols. The Empire will find itself unable to expand beyond current borders. Your ships will encounter quantum barriers they can't cross. Your colonies in disputed territories will be relocated. You won't be destroyed, but you will be isolated until you learn to behave like members of a civilized galactic community." "How long would that take?" "As long as necessary. 10 years, 100 years, 1,000. We're patient, Commander Harris. We've learned that lasting change can't be rushed." Dale took the crystal, feeling its weight in his hand. The fate of the Empire compressed into a small piece of technology. The Empire had thought itself the pinnacle of civilization. Dale realized now they had been children playing in a sandbox, unaware of the vast world beyond their limited understanding. The only question remaining was whether humanity would help them grow up, or decide they were too dangerous to be allowed to continue. Everything hung in the balance, and Dale Harris carried the weight of an entire civilization on his shoulders. As he prepared to return to his ship, to carry humanity's message back to Imperial space, he could only hope that wisdom would prevail over pride. The alternative was too terrible to contemplate. The journey back to Imperial space felt different to Dale Harris. The messenger moved through the darkness between stars, but Dale's mind remained on Earth, replaying everything he had witnessed. His crew was equally quiet, each person processing the profound changes in their understanding of the galaxy. Tracy Bennett sat at her station, reviewing notes from her conversations with human diplomats. Patricia Moore studied the scientific data humans had freely shared, her expression a mixture of wonder and frustration at how much the Empire had yet to learn. Kyle Sanders navigated their course with unusual focus, perhaps grateful for a simple task that didn't require him to rethink everything he believed. Dale held the data crystal Olivia Martinez had given him, feeling its weight despite it being nearly massless. Inside this small object were humanity's terms for peace, their offer to help the Empire grow beyond its current limitations. He knew the military council would see it as either salvation or insult, depending on which voices proved loudest. "Commander," Tracy said suddenly, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking about what Julia Roberts told me. About how humans share thoughts and emotions through their network. Do you think we could ever achieve something like that?" Dale considered the question carefully. "I don't know. The technology is beyond us by centuries. But more than that, I wonder if Imperial culture would accept it. Humans unified 400 years ago after nearly destroying themselves. The Empire has never faced that kind of crisis. We've never been forced to choose between cooperation and extinction. Maybe that's our problem, Patricia added from her station. We've always had enough worlds, enough resources, enough power to avoid making hard choices. We take what we want because we can, not because we need to. That ends now, Dale said firmly. Or at least it should end. If the Council has any wisdom at all, they'll see humanity's offer for what it is, a lifeline. Kyle turned from his navigation console. What if they don't see it that way? What if they see it as weakness? Humans admitted they've been watching us for 50 years and did nothing while we conquered 23 civilizations. Some admirals will argue that proves humans are afraid to fight. Then those admirals are fools, Dale replied. Humans aren't afraid. They're patient. There's a difference. They waited because they hoped we would mature on our own. We disappointed them. The messenger crossed into Imperial space 3 days after leaving Earth. Immediately, Dale's communication systems lit up with priority messages from Fleet Command. Admiral Karen Price wanted a full report the moment they arrived at headquarters. Dale spent the remaining travel time preparing his presentation. He organized the footage his team had recorded, the data humans had shared, the testimonies from each crew member about what they had witnessed. He needed to make the Council understand not just what humanity was, but what they represented for the Empire's future. When the messenger finally docked at Imperial headquarters, Dale found a security escort waiting. 2 officers in formal uniform stood at attention as he disembarked. Commander Harris, the senior officer said, Admiral Price has convened an emergency session of the Military Council. You're to report immediately. Dale nodded, gesturing for his crew to follow. They were led through corridors bustling with activity. News of their return had spread quickly, and officers watched them pass with expressions ranging from hope to suspicion. The council chamber was packed when Dale arrived. Admiral Karen Price sat at the head of a massive table, flanked by Admiral Victor Lane and Strategic Advisor Monica Baker. Senator Julie Morgan occupied a seat near the end, her face unreadable. Around the table sat 24 other high-ranking officials, all eyes fixed on Dale as he entered. Commander Harris, Karen said formally, welcome back. We're eager to hear your report. Dale moved to the presentation area, connecting his data pad to the chamber's display systems. Admiral, Council members, what I'm about to share will challenge everything we believe about the Empire's place in the galaxy. I ask that you hear me out completely before making judgments. He began with the footage from their arrival at human space, showing the hundreds of ships that had suddenly appeared around the messenger. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber as council members saw the impossible vessels with their organic designs and reality-bending movements. These are human military vessels, Dale explained. Each one is controlled through neural interface by human operators who are connected to a quantum network spanning their entire civilization. They don't just pilot these ships. They are these ships in a very real sense. Admiral Victor Lane stood abruptly. This is a trick, special effects designed to intimidate us. It's not a trick, Dale replied calmly. I've seen their technology firsthand. I've walked through their cities, spoken with their scientists, examined their capabilities. Everything you're seeing is real. He continued the presentation, showing images of Earth's orbital stations, the living metal structures that repaired themselves, the cities where millions lived in harmony with nature. He played recordings of his conversations with Olivia Martinez, Marcus Lee, and General Claire Watson. The chamber fell silent as Dale revealed the truth about the Fifth Fleet. The images of 47 human scientists killed without provocation, the research vessel destroyed before it could even send a distress signal. He showed the council exactly what had started this conflict, and it wasn't human aggression. The Fifth Fleet opened fire on unarmed civilians, Dale said, his voice heavy with shame. They then attempted to claim a human colony world, ordering evacuation within 24 hours. Humans responded by relocating both the 5th and 2nd Armada to holding facilities. Every person from those fleets is alive. Senator Julie Morgan leaned forward. Alive? You're certain of this? I am, Dale confirmed. Humans don't believe in unnecessary death. They relocated our people and began education programs, teaching them the truth about what happened. In 10 years, they'll be returned as ambassadors between our civilizations. Education programs, Admiral Victor Lane sneered. You mean indoctrination, brainwashing. I mean education, Dale replied firmly. Teaching them history, philosophy, different perspectives on civilization and progress. Is that brainwashing, or is keeping our citizens ignorant of the empire's conquests the real indoctrination? The chamber erupted into arguments. Some council members demanded immediate military action despite the obvious technological disadvantage. Others advocated for accepting humanity's terms. Still others argued for a middle path, seeking negotiation from a position of strength the empire no longer possessed. Admiral Corinne Price silenced the room by standing. Commander Harris, you mentioned humanity has offered terms. What exactly are they proposing? Dale activated the data crystal, displaying humanity's formal proposal on every screen in the chamber. The terms were clear and straightforward. The Empire would withdraw from all systems bordering human space, a total of 15 star systems. The Empire would pay reparations for the killed researchers in the form of humanitarian aid to species previously conquered by Imperial forces. The Empire would establish a permanent embassy on a neutral station where regular diplomatic contact would prevent future misunderstandings. The Empire would agree to limit military expansion for a period of 50 years while learning peaceful coexistence protocols. In exchange, humanity offered technological assistance in clean energy, medical advances, and agricultural improvements. They offered educational exchanges, allowing imperial citizens to study on human worlds. Most significantly, they offered protection from other advanced species humanity had identified as threats to younger civilizations. Protection, Monica Baker said slowly. They're claiming there are other species as advanced as they are. More advanced in some cases, Dale confirmed. Humanity revealed that they're not the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. They're just the ones watching our region of space. There are others, and according to humans, those others are far less patient and forgiving than humanity has been. The implications settled over the chamber like a heavy weight. The Empire had thought itself the dominant power in known space. The revelation that they were actually among the weakest civilizations, protected only by humanity's mercy, was devastating to imperial pride. Admiral Victor Lane refused to accept it. This is manipulation. They're trying to make us afraid, to convince us we need their protection. It's a strategy to make us dependent on them. Or it's the truth, Senator Julie Morgan countered. And we're being given a chance to grow up before we encounter something that will destroy us without hesitation. Commander Harris, you've spent time with these humans. What's your assessment of their character? Dale chose his words carefully. They're honest, principled, and genuinely committed to preserving life. They could have destroyed the Empire at any point in the last 50 years. Instead, they watched and hoped we would improve on our own. When we finally forced their hand by attacking their people, they still chose education over extermination. That shows remarkable restraint and compassion. Or remarkable stupidity, Victor Lane muttered. No, Dale said sharply. It shows strength, true strength. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself through violence. Humans judge themselves by how they treat those who are powerless against them. They chose to save our people when they could have destroyed them. That's not weakness. That's wisdom we desperately need to learn. Corinne Price studied the terms displayed on the screens. These demands are severe, giving up 15 star systems, accepting limits on our expansion, paying reparations. Many imperial citizens will see this as surrender. It is surrender, Dale admitted. But to reality, not to an enemy. The reality is that humanity could take those star systems by force. They could shut down all imperial expansion permanently. They could quarantine us for 1,000 years until we learn to behave like civilized beings. Instead, they're offering us a partnership, a chance to learn from them and eventually join the wider galactic community. He pulled up the final part of humanity's message, the part he had been saving for last. It was a personal recording from Ryan Cooper, the human captain who had first made contact with the messenger. Ryan's face appeared on the screens, his expression serious but not unkind. "Leaders of the Galactic Empire," he began. "I know accepting our terms feels like defeat. I know it challenges your pride and your perception of your place in the universe. But consider this: every advanced civilization in the galaxy has faced this moment. The moment when they realize they're not as powerful as they believed, not as wise as they assumed." Ryan continued, "We're offering you what we wish someone had offered humanity 400 years ago when we nearly destroyed ourselves. We're offering you guidance, knowledge, and the benefit of our mistakes. You can accept this help and grow, or you can refuse and stagnate, trapped in cycles of conquest that will eventually lead to your destruction." He leaned forward, his eyes seeming to look directly at each council member. "The choice is yours, but know this: if you choose violence, if you attempt to attack humanity or continue your aggressive expansion, we will respond, not with destruction but with containment. You will find yourselves unable to leave Imperial space. Your ships will encounter barriers you cannot cross. Your civilization will be isolated until you demonstrate the maturity necessary to join the galactic community." Ryan's expression softened slightly. "We don't want that outcome. We believe in your potential to grow beyond your current limitations." Commander Harris demonstrated that potential. He listened, learned, and accepted uncomfortable truths with grace and wisdom. If your leaders show the same wisdom, humanity and the Empire can build something remarkable together. The choice is yours." The recording ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Dale watched the council members process Ryan's words, seeing doubt, anger, fear, and hope playing across their faces. Finally, Senator Julie Morgan spoke. "I move that we accept humanity's terms in full and begin immediate negotiations for the implementation timeline." "Seconded," another senator added quickly. Admiral Victor Lane stood again, his face red with anger. "This is madness. We're the Galactic Empire. We don't surrender to primitives who hide in the shadows." "They're not primitives," Corinne Price said quietly, still studying the data on the screens. "They're so far beyond us that comparison is meaningless. Commander Harris is right. This isn't surrender to an enemy. This is accepting reality." She stood, drawing herself to full height. "I've been in the Imperial military for 40 years. I've seen us conquer, expand, and dominate. I thought we were bringing order to the galaxy. Now I see we were just another aggressive species, checked only by the limits of our reach and the mercy of those stronger than us." Corinne turned to face the council. "If we reject these terms, we prove humanity wrong about our potential to grow. We prove we're too proud, too stupid to accept help when we desperately need it. I won't be responsible for that decision. I vote to accept humanity's terms and begin the hard work of becoming better than we are." The vote was called. It wasn't unanimous. Admiral Victor Lane and several others voted against acceptance, arguing for continued defiance despite the obvious consequences. But the majority voted in favor, recognizing that pride was a poor substitute for survival and growth. As the council session ended and officials filed out discussing implementation strategies, Corinne Price approached Dale privately. "You did well, Commander," she said. "Better than I expected. You went a human space as our representative and came back as our conscience." "I just reported what I saw," Dale replied. "No, you did more than that. You challenged us to see ourselves honestly, something the Empire hasn't done in centuries. That takes courage." Corinne paused, choosing her next words carefully. "I'm appointing you as our first official ambassador to humanity. You'll oversee the embassy, coordinate the technology exchanges, and serve as the primary liaison between our civilizations." Dale felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders again, heavier than before. "Admiral, I'm not a diplomat, I'm a military officer." "You're exactly what we need," Corinne countered. "You understand both sides now. You know imperial culture and human philosophy. Most importantly, humans trust you. They chose to show you their civilization because they saw potential in you. Don't waste that." Over the following weeks, Dale worked tirelessly to implement humanity's terms. The 15 star systems were evacuated peacefully, with Imperial colonists relocated to other worlds. It was difficult and expensive, but humanity provided transportation assistance. their superior ships moving people and supplies with efficiency Imperial vessels couldn't match. The reparations proved more complex. Identifying species that had been harmed by Imperial conquest meant acknowledging the full scope of the Empire's actions. Historical records were reviewed, revealing uncomfortable truths about forced relocations, cultural suppression, and resource exploitation. Many Imperial citizens were shocked to learn what had been done in their name. But slowly, the Empire began to change. Humanitarian aid flowed to worlds that had suffered under Imperial rule. Educational programs taught Imperial children about cooperation rather than conquest. Scientists eagerly studied the technology humans shared, discovering new possibilities for clean energy and sustainable development. Dale divided his time between the new embassy station and trips to Earth, building relationships with human officials and learning more about their civilization. Each visit revealed new wonders and new insights into how an advanced society could function. 6 months after the initial contact, Dale stood in the embassy's observation deck with Ryan Cooper, watching ships from both civilizations dock peacefully at the station. Human vessels with their organic designs mixed with Imperial military ships that looked crude by comparison. "Your empire is changing faster than we expected," Ryan commented. "When we made our offer, we thought it might take decades before you truly embraced cooperation over conquest. Instead, you're already implementing reforms." "Fear is a powerful motivator," Dale replied. "Once people understood how close we came to destruction, how much stronger humanity is, they became very motivated to change. Though I'd like to think some of it is genuine growth, not just fear." "It's both," Ryan said. "Change always starts with external pressure. The test is whether that change becomes internalized, whether you continue improving after the immediate threat passes." Dale watched a human transport ship offload medical supplies destined for a former Imperial colony world. "Can I ask you something? When you first encountered the Empire 50 years ago, did you ever consider simply destroying us, eliminating a threat before it could grow?" Ryan was quiet for a moment. "Some humans argued for that approach. They looked at your history of conquest and concluded you were too dangerous to allow to continue, but the majority disagreed. We remembered our own history, how close we came to extinction, how we needed time and space to learn from our mistakes. We decided you deserved the same chance. And if we had continued conquering, if we hadn't attacked your research vessel and forced the confrontation, we would have intervened eventually," Ryan admitted. "There were lines we wouldn't allow you to cross. Species facing extinction, worlds being rendered uninhabitable, atrocities beyond a certain threshold. If you had crossed those lines, we would have acted, but we wanted to give you every opportunity to choose a better path voluntarily." "Do other advanced species share that philosophy?" Dale asked. "The ones you mentioned, the ones more powerful than humanity." Ryan's expression grew somber. "Some do, others don't. The galaxy is vast, Commander Harris, and it contains civilizations with very different values. Some are peaceful, some are aggressive, some are completely alien in their thinking. Humanity positioned ourselves as guardians for this region of space because we don't want younger species destroyed before they have a chance to mature." "You're protecting us," Dale realized. "We're protecting dozens of species," Ryan confirmed. "Most of them don't even know we exist. We prefer it that way. The goal isn't to create dependence or gratitude. The goal is to give younger civilizations time and space to develop without external interference until they're ready for contact." "But you interfered with us. Because you forced our hand," Ryan said. "You expanded far enough and fast enough that continued concealment became impossible. We had to reveal ourselves and set boundaries, or watch you encounter something much worse than humanity. Trust me when I say there are species in this galaxy that would have viewed your empire as either prey or pest, and responded accordingly." The conversation was interrupted by Patricia Moore's voice over the communication system. "Ambassador Harris, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's Marcus Lee. He says it's urgent." Dale and Ryan hurried to the communications center. Marcus Lee's face appeared on the main screen, his usually calm expression replaced by concern. "Dale, Ryan, we have a situation," Marcus said without preamble. One of our deep space monitoring stations detected unusual activity in Sector 94, approximately 20 light-years beyond Imperial space. Energy signatures consistent with trans-dimensional drive systems. Ryan's expression darkened. The collectors? We're not certain yet, Marcus replied, but the signatures match their technology profile. If it is them, they're closer to Imperial space than they've been in 50 years. Dale felt a chill run down his spine. Who are the collectors? Ryan and Marcus exchanged glances before Ryan answered. An extremely advanced species. They harvest resources from inhabited worlds, including sentient beings, which they use for purposes we don't fully understand. They're not evil in any conventional sense. They simply don't recognize other species as having rights or value beyond their utility. How advanced are they compared to humanity? Dale asked, though he feared the answer. In terms of raw technology, roughly equivalent, Ryan said. But their philosophy is completely alien. They see the galaxy as a garden to harvest, and younger species as crops. Humanity has deterred them from this region of space for the last century, but if they're returning, it means they're either testing our resolve or preparing for a major operation. Marcus continued from his screen. We're dispatching scout ships to investigate. In the meantime, I'm recommending we accelerate the Empire's defensive preparations. If the collectors are moving into this region, Imperial worlds could become targets. Dale thought of the billions of Imperial citizens living on thousands of worlds, completely unaware of threats lurking in the darkness beyond their space. What kind of defensive preparations are we talking about? We'll need to establish quantum barrier networks around major Imperial worlds, Ryan explained. The same technology we use to threaten containment of your empire can be used to protect against the collectors. But implementation will require cooperation between human and Imperial forces at unprecedented levels. The Council won't like outsiders placing defensive systems on our worlds, Dale said. There will be suspicions about hidden purposes, concerns about loss of sovereignty. Then you'll need to convince them that pride is less important than survival, Ryan replied bluntly. The collectors don't negotiate, Commander. They don't value diplomatic solutions. They simply take what they want, and they have the technology to do so from species at your level of development. Humanity can protect you, but only if your people allow us to. Dale immediately contacted Admiral Corinne Price, explaining the situation. Her response was swift and practical. If humans are concerned enough to accelerate defensive preparations, we should be too. I'll call an emergency council session. Can you have representatives there to explain the threat? Within hours, Ryan Cooper and Marcus Lee were standing before the Imperial Council, displaying data on the collector's technology and past actions. The images were horrifying. Worlds stripped of all biological life, cities reduced to empty shells, entire populations vanished without trace. These species, Senator Julie Morgan asked, pointing at a list of disappeared civilizations. What happened to them? We don't know exactly, Marcus admitted. The collectors process them somehow. Transform them into something else. We've found evidence suggesting consciousness harvesting, using sentient minds as components in their computational systems. But we can't verify that because anyone taken by the collectors never returns. The council members looked disturbed. Admiral Victor Lane, who had opposed accepting humanity's initial terms, spoke quietly. How do we fight something like this? You don't, Ryan said simply. At your current technological level, you can't. Your weapons would be ineffective, your shields useless. The collectors exist partially outside normal space-time. They can phase through solid matter, manipulate reality at the quantum level, and process information faster than your computers can register attacks. But humanity can fight them, Corinne Price asked. We can deter them, Ryan corrected. We've established this region of space as under human protection. The collectors know that harvesting here would trigger a military response they'd rather avoid. It's not that we're stronger than them. It's that the cost of conflict outweighs the benefit of the resources they'd gain. But that deterrence might be failing if they're approaching Imperial space, Monica Baker observed. Exactly, Marcus confirmed. Which is why we need to reinforce it. If we install quantum barrier networks around your major worlds, the collectors will see that humanity is committed to protecting the Empire. It sends a clear message that this region is off limits. The Council debated for hours. Some members worried about allowing human technology on Imperial worlds, concerned about hidden surveillance or control systems. Others argued that sovereignty was meaningless if they were all harvested by the collectors. Finally, reason prevailed, and the Council voted to accept human defensive assistance. Over the next 3 months, Dale watched the most remarkable engineering project he had ever witnessed. Human ships arrived at dozens of Imperial worlds, deploying quantum barrier generators that would protect entire planets. Imperial engineers worked alongside human technicians, learning the basics of the technology while helping with installation. But more importantly, the project brought humans and Imperials together in unprecedented ways. Working side by side toward a common goal, people from both civilizations began to see each other not as alien others, but as colleagues and eventually friends. Dale spent most of his time coordinating the defensive installations, traveling between worlds to resolve problems and smooth diplomatic complications. He saw Imperial children playing with human technicians during off hours. He saw engineers from both species arguing excitedly about technical solutions, united by their love of problem solving. He saw the beginning of something new, a genuine partnership built on mutual respect rather than domination or submission. 4 months after the first collector detection, human scouts confirmed the worst. A collector fleet consisting of 20 harvester ships was moving through space toward the Empire's outer colonies. They were still weeks away, but their trajectory was clear. Humanity responded by deploying a defensive fleet to intercept. Dale watched from the embassy station as 300 human warships assembled in space, their sleek forms dwarfing the few Imperial vessels that joined them as observers. Admiral Karen Price had insisted Imperial forces witness humanity's military capabilities firsthand, both to understand what protection looked like and to learn what real galactic-scale conflict involved. Dale was given permission to observe from a human command ship, the Vigilant. Ryan Cooper commanded the vessel, and he welcomed Dale to the bridge with a grim expression. "This won't be like the encounter with your fleets," Ryan warned. "The collectors will fight back. You're going to see destruction today, Commander. I wanted you to understand that before we engage." "I understand," Dale replied, though he wasn't certain he did. The two fleets met in empty space between star systems, far from any inhabited worlds. Dale watched through the Vigilant's view screens as the collector ships appeared, their forms unlike anything he had seen before. They were geometric and precise, crystalline structures that hurt to look at directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than human eyes could process. Ryan's voice cut through the bridge's tense silence. "All ships, prepare for engagement. Remember your training. Protect each other and remember what we're fighting for." The battle began with humanity firing first, quantum weapons tearing at space itself to reach the collectors. The crystalline ships responded with weapons of their own, reality distorting around both fleets as technologies beyond Dale's comprehension clashed. 3 human ships were destroyed in the first exchange, simply ceasing to exist as collector weapons phased them out of normal spacetime. Dale watched crew members vanish from sensors, 200 souls gone in an instant, and felt sick. But humanity pressed forward. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, the neural networks allowing hundreds of vessels to act as one organism. They surrounded individual collector ships, concentrating fire until the crystalline structures shattered into fragments that dissolved into nothing. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, humanity had lost 12 ships with all hands, while destroying or driving off all 20 collector vessels. It was a decisive victory, but Dale couldn't celebrate watching the casualty reports scroll across the screens. Over 2,000 human lives lost defending a species that had been humanity's enemy just months ago. Ryan sat heavily in his command chair as the fleet began recovery operations. His face was drawn, aged by the weight of command during combat. "This is what we do, Commander Harris," Ryan said quietly. This is what it costs to protect younger civilizations from the galaxy's real threats. Today, 2,000 humans died so that billions of Imperials could continue living in ignorance of how dangerous the universe truly is. Dale had no words adequate for the moment. He simply stood beside Ryan in silence, bearing witness to the sacrifice. News of the battle spread quickly through Imperial space. The footage was released publicly after some debate, with humans deciding that the Empire needed to understand what protection really meant. Citizens across Imperial worlds watched in shock as human ships fought and died defending planets they had no connection to, protecting people who had been enemies until recently. The impact was profound. Public opinion toward humanity shifted dramatically. What had been grudging acceptance of human superiority became genuine gratitude and respect. Memorial services were held on Imperial worlds for the fallen human defenders, with millions attending to honor people they had never met but whose sacrifice saved their lives. Dale attended one such service on the Imperial capital world. Admiral Karen Price stood before a crowd of 100,000, her voice carrying through speakers to millions more watching remotely. "Today we honor 2,000 humans who died defending our worlds," Karen said. "They owed us nothing. 6 months ago we were enemies. They could have left us to face the collectors alone, could have watched us suffer the consequences of our own arrogance and isolation. Instead, they chose to protect us. They chose to fight for us. They chose to die for us." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. This is what real strength looks like. Not the ability to conquer, but the wisdom to protect. Not the power to dominate, but the courage to defend those weaker than yourself. Humanity has shown us what we should aspire to become. We owe them not just our lives, but our commitment to becoming worthy of their sacrifice. The crowd stood in silence, processing the truth of her words. Dale watched from the side, seeing tears on many faces, understanding that something fundamental had shifted in Imperial culture that day. After the service, Dale met privately with Karen in her office. She looked exhausted but determined. "The council met this morning," she told him. "We've made a decision. The Empire will fully integrate with humanity's defensive networks. We're requesting expanded technology sharing, particularly in defensive systems and space-time manipulation. We want to learn to protect ourselves and eventually to protect others." "That's a significant shift," Dale observed. "We finally understand what we're facing," Karen replied. "For centuries, we thought we were the dominant power in our region of space. We thought military might mean conquest and expansion. Now we understand that real military power means being strong enough to protect life, not destroy it. Humanity has been trying to teach us that lesson. The collectors drove it home in a way nothing else could." She pulled up a star chart showing Imperial space surrounded by humanity's defensive networks. "In 50 years, maybe less, I want the Empire to be contributing to these networks rather than just benefiting from them. I want Imperial ships fighting alongside human vessels to protect other species. I want us to be the civilization that helps the next group of emerging peoples avoid the mistakes we made." Dale felt hope stirring in his chest for the first time in months. "That's an ambitious goal." "It's a necessary goal," Karen corrected, "because humans won't be around forever to protect us. Ryan told me that humanity is already planning their next phase. They're preparing to move beyond this region of space, to explore deeper into the galaxy and extend protection to species even farther from their home. Eventually, this region will need new guardians. I want the Empire to be ready to take up that responsibility." The implications were staggering. Humanity had spent a century protecting this region of space while hoping younger civilizations would mature enough to eventually protect themselves and others. The Empire was being offered not just survival, but purpose. A chance to become protectors rather than conquerors, to use their strength for preservation rather than domination. Dale spent the next year overseeing the integration of Imperial and human systems. Educational exchanges expanded, with thousands of Imperial students studying on human worlds while human scholars taught at Imperial universities. Joint military exercises taught Imperial forces how to operate alongside human vessels. Scientific collaboration accelerated the Empire's technological development at rates that would have seemed impossible years earlier. But more than technology transferred. Philosophy, culture, and values moved between civilizations. Imperial children learned about cooperation and environmental harmony. Human visitors to imperial worlds shared stories of their history, their near extinction, and their long road to becoming protectors rather than conquerors. Dale watched the transformation with growing amazement. The empire that had thought itself supreme was learning humility. The species that had valued conquest above all else was discovering the deeper satisfaction of protection and preservation. It wasn't a smooth or easy change. There were setbacks, resistance from traditionalists, and moments of doubt. But the overall direction was clear. One evening, Dale stood on the embassy station's observation deck with Ryan Cooper, watching ships from a dozen species move through space peacefully. Imperial vessels mixed with human ships, along with representatives from species the Empire had once conquered who now worked alongside their former oppressors in a fragile but growing partnership. "You did it," Dale said quietly. "You changed us. An entire civilization, transformed in less than 2 years." Ryan shook his head. "We didn't change you. We just gave you a reason to change yourselves. The capacity for growth was always there. You just needed to see that cooperation was possible, that there was a better path than the one you were on." "Will we be ready?" Dale asked. "When humanity moves on to protect other regions of space, will the Empire be capable of filling that role?" "I don't know," Ryan admitted. "But you're trying, and that's what matters." The Empire that attacked our research vessel would never have stood alongside us against the Collectors. The Empire that exists now might not be perfect, but it's learning. It's growing. That's all any species can do. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Dale thought about how far they had come and how far they still had to go. The Empire had been given a gift, a chance to become something better than they were. Whether they proved worthy of that gift remained to be seen. But for the first time in his life, Dale Harris believed the future could be brighter than the past. Humanity had shown the Empire that strength didn't come from conquest, that wisdom meant protecting rather than dominating, and that real civilization was measured not by how many worlds you controlled but by how many lives you preserved. The lessons were hard, the changes difficult, and the road ahead uncertain. But they were walking it together now, human and imperial side by side, building something new in the darkness between stars. Something that might in time become a model for other species to follow. And somewhere in that vast galaxy, in regions of space not yet explored, other civilizations watched and waited. Some were threats, like the Collectors. Others were potential allies, waiting to see if humanity and the Empire would fulfill their promise. The galaxy was larger and more complex than anyone had imagined, full of wonders and dangers in equal measure. But whatever came next, whatever challenges awaited in the unknown darkness, they would face it together. That made all the difference. 5 years passed since Dale Harris first traveled to Earth as a frightened military officer carrying the future of the Empire on his shoulders. Now he stood in the same embassy station's observation deck, but everything had changed. His hair had grayed at the temples, and his uniform bore the insignia of ambassador rather than commander. More importantly, the view outside the windows showed a galaxy transformed. The embassy station had grown from a simple meeting point to a bustling center of galactic commerce and culture. Ships from 17 different species docked regularly, including several civilizations humanity had recently introduced to the wider galactic community. The Empire was no longer the newcomer being taught and protected. They were becoming teachers themselves, helping even younger species navigate the complexities of galactic civilization. Tracy Bennett, now serving as deputy ambassador, approached Dale with a data pad displaying the latest reports. "Ambassador, the integration numbers are remarkable. Imperial defensive systems are now operating at 70% efficiency compared to human technology, up from 20% 5 years ago. Our scientists are contributing meaningful innovations to the quantum barrier networks." Dale reviewed the data with satisfaction. "And the cultural integration?" "Even better," Tracy replied. Mixed crews of humans and Imperials serve on over 200 ships now. Intermarriage rates are climbing steadily. 3 universities offer joint degree programs. The younger generation can barely remember a time when our species were enemies. It was true. Imperial children who grew up learning alongside human classmates saw cooperation as natural, conquest as an embarrassing relic of their ancestors' mistakes. They studied humanity's near extinction and the Empire's aggressive history with equal parts fascination and horror, determined not to repeat either civilization's errors. Patricia Moore had become the Empire's chief scientific liaison to humanity. Her engineering skills, combined with her natural curiosity, made her invaluable in helping Imperial researchers understand and adapt human technology. She visited the embassy station frequently to coordinate joint projects. "Dale," she called, approaching with her characteristic enthusiasm despite the formal setting. "You need to see what we've accomplished. The Imperial research team just successfully created a quantum barrier generator using purely Imperial manufacturing techniques. It's still not as efficient as human versions, but it works. We built it ourselves from understanding the principles rather than just copying designs." Dale felt pride swell in his chest. "That's exactly what we needed. How long until we can start deploying them?" 2 years for full production capacity, Patricia estimated. But the real breakthrough is in understanding. We're not just using human technology anymore. We're understanding it, adapting it, and innovating within those frameworks. That's the difference between dependence and partnership. Kyle Sanders had remained in military service, but now commanded an Imperial vessel assigned to joint patrol duties with human forces. He stopped by the embassy whenever his route brought him near the station. "Ambassador Harris," Kyle greeted formally when he arrived for a scheduled meeting. "I'm here to report on the Outer Rim Patrol operations." "How are the mixed crews working out?" Dale asked. "Better than anyone expected," Kyle admitted. "At first there was tension. Imperial crews felt inferior, humans felt they had to prove they weren't condescending. But after a few months of working together, solving problems together, those barriers broke down. Now my crew doesn't think of themselves as Imperial or human, they're just crew." "That's the goal," Dale said. "Eventually, we stop seeing species and just see people." Kyle leaned forward, his expression turning serious. "But there's something else. We've been detecting unusual readings near the edge of explored space, energy signatures that match neither human nor collector technology. Something new is out there." Dale felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came with potential threats. "Have you reported this to Ryan Cooper?" "He's already investigating," Kyle confirmed. "But he wanted you to know that whatever it is, humanity isn't handling it alone this time. He's requesting Imperial ships join the reconnaissance mission. He says we're ready to face unknown threats as partners, not as protected children." The statement carried enormous significance. 5 years ago, humanity had protected the Empire like parents shielding children from danger. Now they were inviting Imperial forces to stand beside them as equals facing the unknown. It was a graduation of sorts, recognition that the Empire had matured enough to share the burden of galactic protection. "Tell Ryan I'll coordinate with Fleet Command," Dale said. "We'll send our best ships and crews." Admiral Corinne Price, now promoted to Supreme Fleet Commander, had become one of humanity's strongest advocates within the Empire. She had transformed the Imperial military from a conquest force into a defensive fleet dedicated to protecting life rather than taking it. When Dale briefed her on the unknown energy signatures, her response was immediate. "We'll send the Fifth Fleet," Corinne decided, a slight smile crossing her face at the designation. "It seems appropriate. The original Fifth Fleet started this relationship by attacking humanity out of ignorance. Let the new Fifth Fleet demonstrate how far we've come by working alongside humans to investigate unknown phenomena." The symbolism wasn't lost on Dale. The Imperial crews that had been lost 5 years ago had finally returned from their education on human worlds, transformed from aggressive conquerors into thoughtful diplomats. Many of them now served in the reformed Imperial military, teaching others what they had learned. Having their fleet designation honor and redeem the name of those who had started this journey carried powerful meaning. The joint reconnaissance mission launched 3 weeks later. Dale requested permission to accompany the fleet, wanting to witness firsthand how far the partnership between humans and Imperials had evolved. Ryan Cooper welcomed him aboard the Vigilant, which would lead the human contingent alongside the Imperial flagship Redemption, commanded by Helen Ross. Helen had completed her service punishment for falsifying the original human survey and emerged as one of the Empire's most effective officers precisely because she understood both sides of the Imperial-human relationship. Her command of the Redemption was seen as redemption in itself, a chance to correct her earlier mistakes by leading the Empire toward a better future. As the combined fleet traveled toward the unknown energy signatures, Dale observed the easy cooperation between human and Imperial crews. They shared meals in common areas, worked together on maintenance tasks, and consulted freely on tactical decisions. Language barriers had largely disappeared, with real-time translation systems allowing seamless communication. One evening, Dale joined a group of young officers, both human and Imperial, as they discussed philosophy in the Vigilance recreation area. Their conversation reflected a generation that had never known a galaxy divided by species-based hostility. "I don't understand why our ancestors fought over resources," a young Imperial officer named Jake said. "There's enough in the galaxy for everyone if we just cooperate and share." "Scarcity thinking," a human ensign named Lisa replied. "When you believe resources are limited, competition becomes survival. When you realize the universe is abundant, cooperation becomes natural." "But the collectors don't think that way," Jake countered. "They see other species as resources to harvest. How do you deal with fundamentally incompatible philosophies?" "By being strong enough to enforce boundaries," Lisa said. "Humanity protects this region not because we're hostile to the collectors, but because we refuse to let them harm species that can't defend themselves. It's not about hatred or revenge. It's about drawing a line and saying, beyond this point, we protect life." The conversation continued, touching on ethics, strategy, and the nature of civilization itself. Dale listened with fascination, realizing these young people were thinking about problems their ancestors couldn't even have conceived. They weren't wondering whether to conquer or be conquered. They were discussing how to build a galactic civilization that valued all sentient life while still maintaining necessary boundaries against genuine threats. The fleet reached the source of the energy signatures 4 days into their journey. What they found astonished everyone. A massive structure floated in empty space, clearly artificial but unlike anything in the database of either humanity or the Empire. It was spherical, roughly the size of a small moon, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as they were observed. "I'm detecting life signs," the sensor officer reported from the Redemption. "Thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. Multiple species, some I recognize from galactic databases, others completely unknown." Ryan Cooper studied the readings carefully. "It's a colony ship, a mobile habitat for refugees or explorers. The energy signature is a distress beacon, though in a format we don't recognize." Helen Ross turned to her communications officer. "Can we establish contact?" "Trying standard protocols now, Captain," the officer replied. "Wait, I'm getting a response." "Audio only, and the translation software is struggling with the language structure. Give me a moment." Everyone on both bridges waited tensely. First contact with unknown species was always delicate, requiring careful diplomacy and patience. Finally, a voice came through the speakers, translated into something approximating Imperial standard. "We are the Wanderers, refugees from Sector 117. Our worlds were consumed by the void. We have traveled for 3 generations seeking sanctuary. Are you the guardians we have heard legends about?" Dale felt chills run down his spine. Sector 117 was nearly 100 light-years away, far beyond any region humanity or the Empire had explored. Whatever had driven these people from their homes was a threat nobody had yet encountered. Ryan and Helen exchanged glances across the communication link between their ships. Then Ryan spoke, his voice calm and welcoming. We are the guardians of this region. You are safe now. We offer you sanctuary, assistance, and protection. Tell us what you need, and tell us about the void that drove you from your homes." Over the next hours, the story emerged. The Wanderers represented 17 different species that had once inhabited a cluster of systems in Sector 117. A phenomenon they called the Void had appeared without warning, a region of space where physical laws broke down and reality itself became unstable. Worlds touched by the Void simply ceased to exist in any conventional sense. Their inhabitants vanished, leaving behind empty space where planets had been. The Wanderers had fled ahead of the spreading anomaly, gathering whoever would listen to their warnings and escaping aboard massive colony ships. They had traveled for 70 years, 3 generations, searching for a safe region of space far from the Void's advance. "How fast is it spreading?" Helen asked, her tactical mind already calculating implications. "It was expanding at roughly 1 light-year per year when we left," the Wanderer spokesman replied. "By now, it may have consumed our entire sector. We don't know if it can be stopped or if it will eventually consume the entire galaxy." The implications were staggering. A threat that could destroy worlds without warning, against which conventional weapons and defenses might be useless. It made the collectors seem like a minor problem by comparison. Dale watched as Ryan and Helen immediately began coordinating response protocols. They contacted humanity's scientific divisions and the Empire's research centers simultaneously, requesting expert analysis of the Wanderer's data. They arranged for the colony ship to be escorted to a safe location where the refugees could settle temporarily while permanent homes were found. But most significantly, they did it all together, human and Imperial officers working as a seamless team without any discussion of whose responsibility this was or who should take the lead. The partnership had become so natural that crisis response was automatic and coordinated. Over the following months, the Void became the focus of intensive study. Human and Imperial scientists worked alongside researchers from the Wanderer species, pooling knowledge and resources to understand the phenomenon. What they discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The Void wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was the aftermath of a failed attempt by an ancient civilization to manipulate the fundamental structure of spacetime. They had tried to create an artificial dimension for energy storage, but the process had gone catastrophically wrong, creating an unstable region that consumed normal space and grew slowly over time. "Can it be stopped?" Karen Price asked during an emergency council session that included human, Imperial, and Wanderer representatives. Marcus Lee, who had traveled from Earth to lead the scientific investigation, delivered the news. "Yes, but not easily. We would need to create a counter field that stabilizes spacetime around the Void's edges, essentially containing it. The technology required is beyond anything humanity has achieved, but the principles are sound. With sufficient resources and cooperation, we could do it." "How long would it take?" Dale asked. "Decades," Marcus admitted. "Perhaps 50 years to develop the technology, build the necessary equipment, and deploy it effectively. The Void is currently 70 light-years away and approaching at roughly 1 light-year per year. If we start now, we can have the containment field operational before it threatens this region of space." Senator Julie Morgan, still serving on the Imperial Council and now widely respected as a voice of wisdom, spoke up. "This is the test, isn't it? This is where we prove whether we've truly changed. 50 years of effort and resources to stop a threat that won't affect us for decades. Our ancestors would have ignored it, focused on their immediate interests. What do we do?" The vote was unanimous across both human and Imperial representatives. They would commit the necessary resources to stop the Void, even though the immediate threat was minimal. They would protect not just themselves but countless civilizations that might exist in the Void's path, species they hadn't even met yet. The Void Containment Project became the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. Humans, Imperials, and the 17 Wanderer species worked together, joined eventually by 6 other civilizations humanity had established diplomatic relationships with. Thousands of scientists, engineers and support personnel dedicated their careers to the project. Dale, now in his 60s, watched the early stages of construction with Ryan Cooper, who had also aged visibly over the years of service. They stood in the embassy station's observation deck, a place that had become almost sacred to both of them as the symbol of where everything had changed. "We're building something remarkable," Ryan said quietly. "Not just the containment field, but the civilization that's building it. 23 different species working together toward a common goal, sharing resources and knowledge freely. This is what humanity hoped for when we first began protecting this region of space." "Will it last?" Dale asked. "After the void is contained, after the immediate crisis passes, will we maintain this cooperation? Or will old patterns of competition and conflict reemerge?" Ryan considered the question carefully. "I think it will last, but not because we've somehow transcended our nature. It will last because we're building institutions and relationships strong enough to survive disagreements. We're teaching young people from all our species to see each other as colleagues and friends first, and as different species second. That's what makes the difference." He pointed to a group of young people visible through the station windows, working on one of the construction projects. Humans, Imperials, and Wanderers of various species collaborated seamlessly, their movements coordinated by shared purpose rather than shared biology. "That's the future," Ryan said. "Not perfect unity, but functional cooperation. Not the elimination of differences, but the recognition that our differences make us stronger together than we could ever be apart." Dale nodded slowly, feeling the truth of it. The Empire had learned that lesson the hard way, through defeat and humiliation and the patient teaching of a species that could have destroyed them but chose education instead. Now they were passing that lesson forward, helping other species avoid the mistakes they had made. "What about humanity?" Dale asked. "You said humans were preparing to move beyond this region, to extend protection to other parts of the galaxy. Is that still the plan?" "Eventually," Ryan confirmed. "But we're not in a hurry. We want to ensure this region is stable and self-sufficient before we shift our focus elsewhere. The Empire and the Wanderer species are learning to be the new guardians. In another generation or two, humanity will be able to step back, knowing this region is in capable hands." The thought of humanity eventually moving on carried mixed emotions for Dale. Gratitude for everything humans had taught the Empire, but also apprehension about whether they were truly ready to stand without humanity's direct protection and guidance. As if reading his thoughts, Ryan smiled. "You're ready, Dale. The Empire is ready. You don't need us anymore, even if it doesn't feel that way. You've learned the lessons, changed your culture, built the institutions. Now you just need to trust yourselves the way we've learned to trust you." They stood together in comfortable silence as the galaxy continued its endless rotation outside the windows. Ships moved through space, carrying people and cargo and ideas between worlds that had once been isolated from each other. The darkness between stars seemed less vast now, filled with light from thousands of civilizations learning to live together rather than fighting over resources and territory. Dale thought about the journey he had taken, from frightened military officer facing an impossible mission to ambassador overseeing the transformation of his entire civilization. He thought about the 75,000 Imperial personnel who had spent 10 years being educated by humans and had returned as living proof that people could change, that old patterns could be broken, that a better way forward was possible. Most of all, he thought about the future generations who would inherit the galaxy that humans and Imperials and so many others were building together. Those young people wouldn't remember a time when cooperation wasn't natural, when species boundaries were barriers rather than simple facts of biological diversity. They would inherit not just the stars, but the wisdom to explore them responsibly. Not just power, but the judgment to use it wisely. Not just technology, but the philosophy to guide its development toward life and creation rather than death and destruction. The empire that had thought itself supreme had learned humility. The civilization that valued conquest had discovered the deeper satisfaction of protection. The species that had been alone had found partnership. And in finding those things, they had found themselves, their better selves, the potential that had always existed but needed the right circumstances to emerge. The work was far from finished. The void still needed to be contained. New threats would surely emerge from unexplored regions of space. Disagreements and conflicts would arise between civilizations despite their best intentions. But they would face those challenges together, as partners, as a community of species committed to protecting life and fostering growth across the galaxy. Dale Harris, who had once carried the weight of his civilization's future on his shoulders, could finally rest easy knowing that future was secure. Not perfect, but secure. Not without challenges, but equipped to face them. Not isolated and vulnerable, but connected and strong. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers in equal measure. But it was also, for the first time in history, becoming a community rather than a battlefield. And that made all the difference.